Hello, welcome to Rough Cut Film Review. This is the, again, late review of Alex Cross, the 2012 action thriller, I suppose you could call it, that genuinely did make it into the cinemas, although granted for not very long. There will be spoilers in this review because, quite frankly, the film's terrible and I don't care. So if you do care, switch off now and I won't spoil the film for you. The director's done that. Now, something I'm often accused of is people just sort of say, oh, Chris, you never like anything. You're always so negative. You know, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just be a normal human being? Well, it's not a lot I can do about that, really. I can only give my own honest opinions to things and I can't start second-guessing myself or saying, well, you know, it may be terrible, but I like that guy's hat. So that's not really going to work. Having said all that, we've had a pretty unprecedented run of good reviews. I mean, I've been mostly positive with reservations, but I've been positive about even things like Cloud Atlas. So, you know, overall, that was a positive review. And I think going back sort of January, 2013, I've not been unkind to anything. I've not been as upset about something as like The Sweeney or the Vampire Hunter or whatever. So, we're on a pretty good run. So Alex Cross is the title, the titular character. It gives me the impression I should know who he is. I didn't, but apparently it's a character from James Patterson's series of paperback thrillers. Those sort of holiday books that I never read under any circumstances. Well, he's in one of those. I get the impression much like Jack Reacher is, but obviously a different writer. And apparently this is the same character that Morgan Freeman played in the 1990s on things like Along Came a Spider, in those, vaguely well-known films. So here the protagonist is played by Tyler Perry. He's been in a lot of stuff according to IMDB, but nothing that I'm actually familiar with. I don't recognise him and I don't recognise any of his work. And on the basis of this film, nor do I want to be. Here the writers are trying to make Alex Cross all things to all men. Let's be perfectly honest. He is the world's greatest black guy, as if Barack Obama didn't exist. He is at one point referred to something like Dr. Detective Cross. And that made me snigger because he's a doctor as well as a detective or an inspector or something, and one of the characters just casually sort of uses his double title like Professor Captain Blake. Yes, that's me. And I wasn't engaged enough even to make a note of who said it or what they exactly said. I just didn't care enough. This guy... And he's incredibly poorly played by the actor, by the way. It's worth mentioning that he is terrible. He's sort of like Shaft, but really clever, a great husband. He is the world's finest man. He just is, in every which way you can think of. He's got everything going for him. He's a great fighter. He's a great lover. He's a great dad. He's a great thinker. But we don't really see any of this. Do you remember the episode of The Simpsons where they introduced Poochie? And it was a really hilarious episode. And when they had that sort of committee thinking, and they were sort of, well, we want to make him a cool surfboarding rapper, we need to rastify him by 20% or so, all that kind of stuff. Well, they've done that here. This is the worst sort of corporate committee thinking, except that in Alex Cross, they're not in on the joke. And the bad guy as well, he's exactly the same. And he's played inexplicably badly by Matthew Fox. He's that guy on Lost who used to breathe heavily a lot. And the baddie here is incidentally known as Picasso because he leaves drawings, charcoal drawings at crime scenes where, he'll allegedly torture a woman terribly, but it's very difficult to know what's going on with this director, and then he'll leave a picture because he's so cocky or something. Who knows, but that's the idea behind it. And he's supposed to be the most sinister baddie of all time. He's a woman-hating sadistic psychopath who also does mixed martial arts, so he's really tough. He does it in the hectagon or whatever it's called, and at the same time he's supposed to be the consummate and ice cold professional. So they're covering all bases there. He's a complete psycho, but at the same time he thinks everything clearly, he doesn't make any mistakes, and essentially he's a genius. So does that all make sense? No, not really. At one point early we can see he's really evil because he injects a woman who can only be described as a hottie with a green liquid that looks like it's been borrowed from the set of Reanimate, and as she's tied to the bed, and she's really slutty and just sort of one of the women from FHM if they were real, she's on the bed going, oh yeah, I love it, and then oh no, he's going to torture her, and she's tied to the bed and her security guys are all downstairs. So then he sort of chops all the fingers off, as you do, and she doesn't look very happy about it. And there's something about this drug. She can feel the pain, but she can't scream or something. Seemed unnecessary. There we are. But then he goes downstairs and, according to the police, incredibly professionally shoots dead all of the security guards who had inexplicably let him in to torture the woman they were protecting. And, the police, they use it as a device to show how incredibly professional he is and ice cold. And he sort of goes downstairs and shoots them all. But it really does appear to be a case of that these security guards were just entirely, or bodyguards or whatever they are, entirely incompetent. So we've got these two competing sides to this pathetic and feeble and frankly laughable character, and laughably played as well by Matthew Fox. The psychopath and the professional, and the banter between them, between Fox and Picasso. Oh, the banter on the phone. We've got these clawing conversations between the goodie and the baddie, where the baddie is all cliched and, oh, this is all your fault, I've done this, to an unbelievable degree. And then they start showing this fantastically ill-conceived dialogue where Alex Cross is demonstrating why he's a doctor. In this unbelievably clunky dialogue, he's trying to deconstruct the baddie and his motives and why he does stuff. And it's all the sort of thing that a really stupid sort of 16-year-old A-level student would, or AS level, I think they've changed it, would think, if they were studying psychology. It's the sort of, cliched nonsense that they'd spout. And that the to and fro between them is really something to behold. It's really embarrassing. It's writers having absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Later on, the baddie starts, following Cross because it's all his fault, apparently, that he's a baddie murderer sort of thing. And then, oh no, in this terribly directed scene, he then assassinates Cross's pregnant wife with a sniper rifle. And then a bit later, pretty much straight after, really, the next day or something, Cross just carries on with his job in the case and trying to find this guy. No one at work really bothers to mention the fact that his pregnant wife was murdered by this guy, or think to take him off the case, or everything just sort of carries on, and he's actually really rather calm. The baddie then calls him and said, haha, now I'm looking at you with a sniper rifle. And the goodie is sort of, oh, I'm not afraid of you. Why aren't you afraid of him? And it's just sort of, hang on a second, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, I know it's supposed to be a cheap thriller, but it is absolutely stupid. And there's some buddy cop stuff between Cross and his partner, who's a white guy, and it makes me think how good End of Watch really was with the interracial, partners, buddies, and you actually believe they're friends. Here, they pretty much introduce the partner as he's having sex with a hottie, one of these hotties that are in this film, and he loves Cross so much. Boy, I've got to take this call, baby. And then she's sort of, oh, please, I love it so much. And it's just awful. Rob Cohen directs this. He's made a few Vin Diesel films, and he does a terrible job. The whole thing at best looks like a very poor episode of CSI or NCIS, any of those terrible series. A few average actors like Jean Reno, who can be okay, pop up at times, all pretty bad. At the end, the final sequence is a rocket attack where essentially Picasso hijacks the Docklands Light Railway but in Detroit and fires a rocket, and there's this terrible CGI effect of an explosion. And I don't know, I mean the budget was apparently $36 million. I'd love to know where that money went, because the whole thing looks terrible, looks all so cheap. There's a black, it's supposed to be a police helicopter flying at some point, for some reason it's never really involved in the plot, we just see it flying. Why they didn't just film someone else's helicopter flying off, I've got no idea, because it doesn't even have police markings on it. It's just, they're cutting corners in all the wrong places. If they don't have the money to do these set pieces, don't do them. Just do something that looks authentic. Don't try and do them on the cheap because it looks terrible. I mean, the director here is just terrible, and it looks worse than most straight-to-DVD or TV movies, or, as I said, rubbish episodes of CSI. So this is supposed to be setting up the character for a rebirth of a new series. Well, no, not on the strength of this. It's not going to get a sequel. And the only good news is it's set in Detroit, and I think more films should be set in Detroit, like RoboCop. Kind regards, Christopher Thomas.